So I would do what anybody did in that situation and think, right, enough's enough. I'm going to eat healthily, going to lose a bit of weight. And so I would start to eat fruit. I'd eat more fruit. I would eat less but more often, as was the rule back then, or I wouldn't say the rule, but that was advice that was certainly given. And now I understand why, but at the time, that would make things even worse.
Welcome to Forever Young, the health podcast from Lanserhof. My name is Niels Behrens, and I'm not looking for eternal youth. I'm trying to find answers to what leading a healthy life really means. Therefore, I will be talking to various health experts to find out what you can do to stay fit for as long as possible. And who knows, perhaps this knowledge will help lead you to a longer life after all. Just listen to your gut. Most of the time, this is easier said than done. But occasionally, our stomach does communicate with us in pretty obvious ways. For example, through loud rumbling when we are waiting for our lunch break. Unfortunately, our gut is especially communicative when something doesn't please it, which often shows through stomach aches and just feeling uncomfortable. My guest today has a lot of experience with these rather negative signals from her stomach. But luckily, she also found a way to silence them. Claire Irvin is a journalist and a novelist and known to be one of the most exciting and dynamic magazine editors in the UK. Having worked for the areas of parenting, fashion, celebrities and more, she's now the head of travel in the Telegraph newspaper. In 2018, she visited the Lanserhof Lans, also independently from her duties as a travel journalist. She went to Austria, hoping to heal her ongoing stomach and digesting issues. And today, she will share with us how she managed to solve the problems. Welcome, Claire Irvin.
Hi, thank you.
So, Claire, thank you very much for your time. In our conversation before we started the recording, you mentioned already that your digesting problems were one of the most clicked interviews of the Telegraph for many, many months.
Yes.
So maybe let's share this information also with our listeners and start with the beginning.
Well, I mean, it was quite incredible, really. I'd written the feature about my gut journey and my trip to Lanserhof, and I'd given it the title, the headline, "How a Gut Clinic Changed My Life," because I really believed that it had. And one of our biggest radio presenters and TV presenters actually in the UK, Chris Evans, had apparently seen, it was the cover feature for the Telegraph magazine, this feature, and he'd seen it one weekend, he'd picked it up, he'd read it, he'd talked about it to his wife. I didn't go into detail, but clearly he must have had some gut issues himself. Talked about it with his friends, found that there was a really, really high level of interest amongst his friendship group and his family about this, and called me on the show. So Chris's breakfast show for Virgin Radio is I think it's certainly one of the biggest radio shows in the UK, and he is definitely a national treasure. So, people take what he says very with a pinch of salt, but they like to hear what he says. And he clearly has a huge amount of influence. So I went on, we had a really great chat, and he's very fun. He's quite very, very funny presenter. He's got a big team of people around him. So we had a really great conversation. And literally, I left that studio and got back to the newsroom at the Telegraph. And my feature was trending on Twitter. It was, the top hitter on the Telegraph website that day, which I was delighted about. It's always great to have a successful feature. But it just went on and on. And as I was saying to Niels before the podcast, we have this great dashboard in the newsroom which shows us all our statistics and how things are doing. And this story just kept sitting at the top of our leaderboard, and on and on and on. And then it became a standing joke, Claire's gut. Every morning at conference we talk about it. It's very funny. So, and indeed, as I said, it's still one of the, the most engaging features we've run, and continues to do very well. And I think that just shows what a universal issue gut health is, and also how unspoken it's been for so long, and I'm sure we'll get to talk about how long I suffered with bad gut health, but kind of I just thought it was me, I didn't think it was something I could solve. I just thought it was there. Yeah, but at the end,
it's not this typical kind of small talk you are doing at parties or something like that, talking about your gut and your stomach. And honestly, it is something very personal at the end. So on the one hand, I could understand that you are happy to write such a successful piece, but on the other hand, it must felt a little bit weird in a way to, knowing that the whole nation...
everyone knowing about my bowel.
Exactly. Exactly.
And not only that, the photograph that they'd taken was me in my dressing gown, and I just kept saying, can we just at least change the photograph? People are really sick of that dressing gown. Although, can I say, it was a Lanserhof dressing gown, so a very lovely one too. But,
Claire, maybe some of our listeners haven't read your piece, so let's start from the beginning. So what kind of problems you had? What was the reason behind that you came to us?
Well, for so many years, and I was thinking when we spoke before, exactly when did it start? And I honestly can't remember. It would have been in my mid-20s. I'm not a stressed person, but I do thrive on a high level of busyness and kind of everyday stress. And so I suppose, that has an impact on you physiologically as well as psychologically. And, I've, as I say, very busy, very social life. I was always out. My job means I'm always at functions. So, probably my diet wasn't great. I was probably drinking, although not a lot at any one time, probably more regularly and more than I should have done. I can remember, certainly in my early 30s, having really, really severe cramps, and I can't remember not having moments at work where I would have to excuse myself, shall we say, or feeling very, very tense and on the cusp of huge embarrassment in meetings when I felt my stomach cramping, and obviously, that leading to perhaps wind or something really, socially unacceptable. And
was it also that you can hear it, that you have the problem? So was it possible for
there would be. Yeah, I would have gurgling tummy quite a lot. But it was also just that sense of having to control something nobody else could see and focusing on that potentially rather than fully focusing on what I should have been as well. So, the impact was fairly 360. It was on how I felt, how I acted, how I did my job, and therefore how I socially interacted with people. So, I think this is also why it is such, for those people who suffer from it and don't feel they can talk about it, suddenly being able to read about somebody else's experiences or talk to them about it is so impactful because, and as I say, gut health was not a thing when I was in my early 30s. I'm now 47. So that's nearly 20 years ago, and people just, whether or not they didn't know about it, but just didn't talk about it. So I just assumed it was the way my body worked. It was something I was going to have to deal with. And although it did get really bad a couple of times, so I had to, at one stage I went for an endoscopy, but equally actually going to the doctors, it wasn't really taken seriously. My GP would kind of look at me with a blank look on their face as if I, was just, I don't know, not putting it on, but it just was a thing I'd have to just suck up and just get on with.
Yeah, the thing is that this is one of these typical
I
symptoms.
don't know if that's answered your question in full.
No, but this kind of symptoms is for me is a very typical thing where you can't say that you're really ill, but on the other hand, you're not feeling well. And this is exactly the problem from my point of view, that from the official diagnosis, you are healthy, you're not ill, but at the end it doesn't matter if you're not feeling comfortable. So this is exactly what I would say. This is one of the core competences from Lanserhof, why the people are coming to us.
And you know, the really confusing thing about it was that for years and years, you know, it's this vicious circle whereby I would clearly have overdone it. I would have, you know, been eating unhealthily. I would have been drinking too much. So I would do what anybody did in that situation and think, right, enough's enough. I'm going to eat healthily, going to lose a bit of weight. And so I would start to eat fruit. You know, I'd eat more fruit. I would eat less but more often, as was the rule back then, or I wouldn't say the rule, but that was advice that was certainly given. And you know, now I understand why, but at the time, that would make things even worse. So I would end up doubled over. You know, the feeling I had, which I didn't realise until I was at Lanserhof, and I didn't feel like it anymore, was that I was constantly doubled over, could never stand up straight. Now, although I may well have actually physically been standing up straight, the feeling was that I couldn't. And actually eating healthily would just make me feel even worse. Well, now I know, I've been to Lanserhof, that's because I've got an off-the-scale fructose allergy. But, you know, who knew back then? Because nobody was taking me seriously. Nobody was listening. I was just getting on with it. So, you know, I'd be on this diet, my stomach would bloat even more than it had done before, I'd feel even worse. Within a couple of weeks, I was back on the cheese baguettes and a, you know, glass of wine. And of course, exacerbating the problem even more. So, you know, it really is, it's very detrimental to quality of life and overall health.
So I think a friend of yours introduced you to the Lanserhof or Landsmed concept. So how did that happen? Or have you started to speak about things like that with your friends? Or how was this conversation?
No, I hadn't started to talk about it with friends. But fortunately for me, I have a friend who started to talk to me about hers. She's a very amazing person who's very in touch with, you know, her own inner health, and self-care is healthcare is her motto. And, you know, she has worked within the health and beauty industry for a long time. She was a regular at Lanserhof. She was very, you know, as I am now, I have been to Lanserhof, very comfortable with speaking about it. And we were just talking about it one day when it was really troubling me, and I just burst into tears. And, you know, she of course, she had no idea that I was suffering from the same thing she had. And actually, she had a much lesser problematic gut, but she'd just gone out of interest, I think, and found it transformative. So there was me doubled over with pain. And she just said, you know, there is no, yes, here are the principles by which Tracy, my friend, now living. But really, you know, the best thing is just go there and see it for yourself and find out, you know, your own rules. And she was absolutely right. So I booked it, I think, that week or the following week. Because, you know, I just, and she could describe to me exactly how I was feeling, except not to the same extent that I was feeling. And then she could describe how she now felt. And I just thought, I want to feel like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because sometimes it felt so right that you get some recommendation in terms of your nutrition or things like that. But at the end, everyone is different, and especially the gut. There are a million of bacteria there, and you can't say, okay, this was the solution for me. It doesn't mean that this could be a solution for you. So describe your experience in Lans. How was your problem approached differently compared to the doctor specialist you went before?
Oh, well, the most transformative. Even I'd only been through the door, I think 30 seconds, was that look, instead of the blank look I'd get from my GP, was the look of total understanding that I got from everybody. And so that was the first, and, you know, I think I cried with lovely Dr. George, you know, and I think I probably cried with everybody, just out of a sense of, you know, I think it was so much pent up pain and frustration and discomfort and confusion that I hadn't even really realised I was carrying. And then to sort of be there and be understood, I think was the first impact. But also this sense of, you know, when you are poorly and you go to get things sorted out, you are surrounded by other poorly people. And I knew I wasn't poorly. I knew that I was healthy, but I just didn't, something was wrong. And to be there and surrounded by the other guests, you know, who were from all different walks of life and all different countries and demographics, but they, you know, they were pretty much, I felt it was nice to be surrounded by people who we all shared that problem. You know, we wanted to get something sorted. And I just loved the fact that there was such a scientific base to it as well. You know, it wasn't, as I said, I'd done detoxes before and I'd done very successful weight loss programs, but they would always have a negative impact on my gut. You know, from, I whisper it, but, you know, kind of meal replacement diets, particularly really bad. Great for weight loss, really bad for my gut. As I said, right through to sort of what you'd think were detoxes or healthy eating. But here I just, at Lanserhof, imagining I'm there now, I just felt that I just gave myself over completely in trust. And it just felt like such a holistic and, you know, just very welcoming, obviously very luxurious and comfortable, but scientific too. So it was just amazing.
Okay. So, and how did your symptoms change after your stay, or maybe also already during your stay?
Oh, goodness. So straight away, you know, literally within 24 hours. I remember, and so at Lanserhof, when, you know, I think I wrote about it in my feature actually, that one of the first things that struck me before I'd even got through the door, we walked along the side of the dining room and I was thinking, why is there a dining room? Why are people eating? I'm here to fast. You know, I don't come here to eat. But of course, you know, that dining experience is central to the whole programme. And I know you're not meant to talk at dinner, but of course we do. And the lady that I shared a table with was so wonderful, Swiss lady. And within 48 hours, so of course we didn't know each other. Within 48 hours, she said, "Oh, it is like a different Claire." and I said, "What?" And she said, "You just look." She said, "You look entirely different." And I went back and I really looked at myself and I thought, she's absolutely right. You know, I felt lighter, but my face had changed. I looked like I'd lost several stone or several kilos in weight. And I hadn't, because I'd only been there 48 hours. But the you know, this puffiness and water retention was sort of draining out of me. And being replaced by sort of lightness and you know, the other thing which I found really interesting was I think probably lots of people are very put off by the idea of fasting. How can I not eat? That is just not possible. And I'd been quite scared about that as well. And actually, you know, it's quite addictive. And I shocked myself by how addicted I became to that sense of cleansing. And, you know, yeah, I mean, it was, you know, the impact on many different things was, and I slept, you know, I just slept and slept and slept. And that was because I wasn't uncomfortable anymore. And literally that happened, as I say, within 24, 48 hours. Incredible.
Are you still in contact with this lady you met on your table?
No, we didn't. She was, She was really lovely. We did exchange contact details, and we did have a couple of emails. She, culturally, I think she was a much more. I would have been happy too, but I think she's just quite a private person. But we, and she was there for some very serious medical reasons, I think. So I think she had quite a lot on her plate. But she was a return visitor, and that's the other thing that I loved. So I sat opposite her, and then I'm next to this guy from Canada, I think, and he was a very, very busy exec. And he said to me, he didn't say what Lanserhof had cured him of, but it was something fairly serious. And he came back 2 or 3 times a year, and I just thought, wow, I know why. Yeah, sometimes people say that and you think, oh, do you not fancy trying somewhere different? If you're travelling, why would you always come back to the same place? But when they both said that they came back, I thought, well, I know exactly why you come back. And whenever I hear of people going there, I'm sort of instantly transported back into that amazing sense of inner calm and positivity that you just know you're going through some really amazing change.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you say. This exchange to these other guests is for me one of the most important factors from the stay, because you have the feeling that you have that you're sharing in a way similar experience, even if the symptoms or the reasons why you're coming different. Nevertheless, you're going through a kind of process. And this is a kind of bonding experience in a way.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
This is like it was for me. So I was on a table with 6 persons, and so I have 4 other persons, and I'm still in contact and friend with 2 of them. So one of them was also from Hamburg, and I'm seeing him quite often. He's becoming a real friend, and this is a really interesting thing. But nevertheless, it is all about this very intimate exchange you're having there, and this is what I really like. So how was it then to come back to your real life, to your normal life? What was the most important things you learned about yourself and you have now adapted?
Well, there was lots of things that I learnt that I that I don't necessarily keep up as I should do, like the chewing and the not drinking with meals. I find those are they're incremental. They start to creep back in, and you have to go back and think, no, I'm not meant to be doing this. But the one thing that I have absolutely adhered to is the fasting, is the 16-8 fasting idea. So I try to eat within an 8-hour window. And it's been very interesting, actually, during lockdown. One of the things that I struggled with most was, and I realise when I'm saying this, first world problems. I know people have been through dreadful things throughout lockdown and really struggled mentally. I'm very lucky that, I had a very busy but positive lockdown. But with all the family in the same eating together all day, every day, I was then eating 3 meals a day. And of course, I don't want to skip meals and introduce that idea to the children. So it's very much all sitting down 3 times a day. And although on the one hand, careful what you wish for, because, meals with the family is something we don't normally have enough time for every single day. Suddenly I was in this situation where, I was having to eat 3 meals a day. And it had a really negative effect on how I felt, because I'd got used to enjoying feeling hungry, and I didn't feel hungry, and I was eating when I didn't need to eat, and I felt like I'd put on loads and loads of weight, and I just felt sluggish, and I started to have the cramps again, and I think, honestly, for me, all the other changes in terms of what to eat, how you eat, are all part of that, of the picture of great gut health. But for me, the single most important thing was when you eat, and that fasting routine. And since my husband's back at work, kids are back at school, and I'm still working from home, but I have just felt much calmer and much more in control, and able to enjoy those meal times again, because I'm doing them in a way that suit my metabolism and my gut health.
Okay. So Claire, thank you very much for sharing. So just imagine that you will meet someone with similar problems that you were suffering from, for example, bloating or other stomach issues. And not everybody can immediately book and stay at Lanserhof. So what would be your recommendation for this person? So, or now our listeners probably, which are in a similar situation, what would you recommend to them if they are not able to go to Lanserhof directly? Is there something what you say which is an advice you can share?
Well, and I do have these conversations a lot. The first thing I say is about fasting. It's try and eat within an 8-hour period and have 4 hours between meals and don't snack. And just give your body some time. In fact, I had this very conversation this morning with a friend of mine, and just give your body time to digest and rest in between eating. I do always talk about the chewing your food 40 times because just people love that conversation. And then, particularly if you're then eating with people, that it's just this fascination that you can actually chew more than twice,
Yes, definitely.
And that's the thing. I think that people always remember. Oh yeah, that place you went, you had to chew 40 times.
And honestly, you don't have to go. You don't have to count. At the end, you just learn when you have the feeling that your food is really chewed well, that it starts to become a little bit sweeter than it was before. Yeah. Then you're at the right level. And because I when I started to count, it's so boring and I really hate it.
Life's too short.
But really. Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's and I mean we have cut down. We don't sort of graze with food or with drink anymore, or we try not to. So whereas I think particularly actually during lockdown, a lot of people had started having a glass or two of wine every single night. We really don't do that because it isn't great for my gut health or actually my husband, for either of us. So
neither for your sleep quality, so you can really see that the sleep quality is going really down.
Well, people scoff, but I think my sleep is of a lesser quality even after just one glass of wine. Now, I'm not suggesting that after one glass of wine I'm in any way inebriated or that's too much on a social occasion. All I'm saying is I can feel the difference in my sleep if I have a drink or if I don't.
Definitely.
And so, getting enough sleep, I would say, it's a modern problem, isn't it? But that's so important as well.
Excellent, Claire. Thank you very much for sharing again these experience you had, and I'm really looking forward to see you again at Lanserhof.
Yeah, I can't wait to be there. Lovely to speak to you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a review and subscribe to this podcast. Please stay healthy.